Wednesday show. Wednesday show. Wednesday show. Wednesday show. Wednesday show. And oh yeah. How's everybody doing? How you doing, Joe? I don't know if you're still there. I had the thing in the background, waiting to go live, and all of a sudden I saw it. I was waiting until 9:30, and I saw your comment, so I don't know if you're still there. But if you are, hello. If you're not, oh yeah. Well, not oh yeah, like you left, like just a response to your oh yeah. How's everybody doing? Oh, there. Okay, you are still there. Whew. Isn't that sad that one, it just shows like the usual yellow, but this one lets us know that you've been a member for 15 months, which I greatly appreciate. So thank you so much. How's everyone else out doing that? We got a few people who are starting to slowly pop on there. Hey, Frank fam, how you guys doing today? So today we're going to be going back to our roots. We're going to go back to our roots of the Wednesday show, and we're going to have it so you guys are going to be voting on what you want the episode to be about. We have not done that for quite some time here. Happy birthday, Natalie and Gilead. Thanks, guys. So we're going to be going through it. We're going to be having it so you guys are going to vote. We're going to give you 3 different options to vote. We've been doing a lot of brackets. We've been doing a lot of Run Disney recaps, trip recaps, a lot of other recaps. So tonight we're going to shift gears and we're going to go through and have it so I'm going to give you 3 different options of what we're going to have to possibly do tonight. And you guys will be voting on which one you would like to do. But of course, before we get to all that stuff, let's start off the 814th episode of the Wednesday show in 5, 4, 3, 2. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 814th episode of the Wednesday show. Today is March 26th, 2025, and I'm your host, as always, Brent Dodge. Hello. Today we're going to be going through and talking about Disney with you guys, where you're going to choose the topic. But of course, before we get to that, let's talk about our news for the week. First off, thank you everyone out there who's been joining us for our Saturday in the Park. If you didn't already know, every single Saturday we do a live broadcast from someplace found throughout the Walt Disney World Resort. You never know where we're going to be coming to you from, but I promise you, every single Saturday we will be coming to you someplace from Disney. So make sure you join us every single Saturday over on my YouTube channel at 1 o'clock Eastern Time for a grand old time. And of course, as we go through here tonight, as the show goes on, if we get more subscribers as we go through, as always, we will go into extra innings. We are starting off at 8,434 subscribers. So even if that goes up to 8,435 as the evening goes on here, we will go into extra time about Disney. So send a friend or 2 or 1,566, because that will get us to 10,000. Preferably send 1,566. That's that. I mean, 1 or 2 is nice, but whoever sends out 1,566, BFFs. And of course, in addition to that, tonight's episode is, as always, sponsored by our wonderful, our super duper, our always amazing Patreon pals. Thank you, our Patreon pals out there, for being the sponsor to tonight's episode. If you are one of our Patreon pals out in the chat room right now, give us an oh yeah. Okay, so like I said, howdy, Alex. As I said, tonight what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going back to what we've done in the past, but we just kind of got away from it for a while because we've had Run Disney races and trip reports of Disneyland and Run Disney, and then of course Run Disney, and we've done brackets and we've done Run Disney, and we've done a lot of different on-topic things. But I want to completely switch it up tonight. We're going to be going back and having it so you guys are voting for what the topic is going to be tonight. So I'm going to give you guys 3 options, and from those 3 options, you guys are going to vote. Whatever has the most votes at the end of a 2-minute voting period will be what tonight's episode is going to be about. So we can either do a deep dive into an attraction. There's going to be any different type of attraction around Walt Disney World where we can go through and talk about the history, the fun facts, the storyline, etc., etc., etc. I don't have a specific attraction in mind, so we'll figure it out together. We can do that, or We can do an Ask the Expert where you guys go through and send me questions about anything and everything Disney, and we will go through and answer any and all questions that you guys throw at me. Or, of course, one of my favorites that we've not played for quite some time, a little game that I like to call Connect the Dots, where you guys throw a bunch of random Disney topics at me, and I have to connect the dots from one topic to another topic. And we're going to give you two minutes to throw your votes in, starting right now. So those three options are a deep dive into an attraction, an episode of Ask the Expert where you send any and all questions about anything and everything Disney to me, or a game of Connect the Dots. You guys have 1 minute and 45 seconds left to throw those votes in. So we're just going to kind of sit here and wait for those votes. I'm just going to stare at you in the meantime. No, I'll keep on talking because that's what I do best. Okay, we got some votes coming in here. We got a vote for Connect the Dots. We got a deep dive. We got the dots there. Honestly, I am going to be perfectly happy with any and all things that we do here. I would also like to point out that we are already up one more subscriber, so you guys have already earned a little bit of extra time tonight. So keep on throwing those friends over there. We are already going to give an extra about 5 minutes at least for the show at the end here. But now we are 1,565 people away from hitting our next one. We got another vote for Deep Dive. You guys have 1 minute left. 1 minute. Right now, it is a tied vote. Connect the Dots and Deep Dive are both tied here. We got a lot of people who are watching that have not voted yet. So if you're one of those people and you're like, you know what, I don't know what I'm going to vote for, but I'll just sit here in silence. We also have a lot of people who just joined us. Right now, we are doing a vote for what tonight's topic is going to be. It's either going to be a deep dive on an attraction, a game of Connect the Dots, where I have to connect every single thing that you guys are throwing into the chat room with the previous comment that's in the chat room, or a thing of Ask the Expert, where we send things about anything and everything Disney, and I go through and answer any and all questions. You guys have 20 seconds left to vote, and we are still at a tie, and we have about 15 people at least who are watching that have not voted yet. So please, someone vote. Okay, we're going to give you guys 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we are still at a 1 Connect the Dots, 1 Deep Dive, 1 Connect the Dots, and another Deep Dive. Right now it is a 2-2 vote. So whoever's the next vote that comes in for either the Deep Dive or a Connect the Dots, that will be our topic of choice this evening. We just have to wait for one vote to come in. So we'll just stare at each other awkwardly. No, we just need to vote. Anybody. Currently, between Facebook and YouTube, we have 27 people who are watching, and we have 4 votes. So that means 23 of you now have not voted. So if you're one of those 23 people, literally just vote for either Deep Dive or Connect the Dots. Whichever you vote for will be our topic tonight. Also, we have now lost that subscriber, so we're back to our regular length of time for the show. That's funny. There we go. Deep Dive and Deep Dive. So Deep Dive is going to be the episode tonight. Okay, so here is the thing. We have so many different attractions that we could do a deep dive on. So I'm going to give you guys 3 options. We're going to do a second vote here. This time, the first one to hit 2 votes will be the attraction that we do a deep dive on. Okay, actually, you know what we can do? Should we do deep dive on a land or attractions here? We have a 1-800 number is calling us right now. Brent's Barbecue. You kill them, we grill them. Every time I answer like that, they never actually talk. Okay, so the 3 attractions that I'm going to give you guys as a deep dive topic is going to be number 1. How about, I don't even know. Does anyone have any suggestions out there? Actually, you know what? Throw some suggestions out there, and then we might go through and go with what attraction you want us to take a deep dive at. That is my go-to way to answer the phone. I do on any spam calls. I usually say Brent's Barbecue. Yeah, kill them. We grill them. And only one time did the person actually answer and go, "That's funny." I'm like, You're not supposed to answer. You're just supposed to hang up. Okay, so let's say we can do a deep dive on Space Mountain, or I don't want to do that one. Space Mountain, I do want to, is a possibility. I thought of another one. I was like, no, I don't feel like talking about that one tonight. Someone's throwing the monorail out there. We can do a deep dive about the monorail as well. I don't know how deep we can get into the monorail, but I think we might be able to get kind of deep into the monorail. And then, Rise of the Resistance. I do like that idea. Okay, so those are your three options. We are doing a deep dive either about the monorail, Rise of the Resistance, or Space Mountain. Again, I'm going to give you guys like 60 seconds to vote this time. Whichever one has 2 votes first will be the attraction that we will do a deep dive on. I think I know which one I want to do a deep dive on, but we will see. So Space Mountain, Rise of the Resistance, or the monorail are going to be your 3 options there. So you have 60 seconds to throw your votes in. Otherwise, I'll just choose one of the 3. Because a lot of people are sitting there in silence today. Rise. We got another vote for Rise, and that's actually 2. And I said as soon as we hit 2, we're going to go. So we're going to do an episode all about Rise of the Resistance, which is going to be a lot of fun because we've actually never done an entire episode about Rise of the Resistance before. So let's get this party started and take you guys to a galaxy far, far away. Now, before we actually start talking about Rise of the Resistance, I think it's important for us to talk about the history of how we get to Rise of the Resistance, because Rise of the Resistance actually fits perfectly into a storyline that most people completely avoid at all costs. Not all costs, but there's sometimes where people, they don't like things, and because they don't like things, it just kind of brings me down, and I'm like, just let people enjoy what they want to enjoy. That's how I feel with the whole Star Wars fan base for the most time. I'm one of those people who I enjoy most things Star Wars. There's some things I'm like, I don't like it as much, but I'm not going to be like, hey, you're a terrible person for liking this. But that's some people. So in order for us to talk about Rise of the Resistance, we also have to talk about something else that's risen in the Star Wars galaxy, and that is the Rise of Skywalker, which is probably most people's least favorite Star Wars movie, but it's actually very important that we talk about Rise of Skywalker in order for us to talk about Rise of the Resistance. So let's go back to the year 2019. Now, in the year 2019, we had something miraculous happening all around the world. Star Wars was at an all-new high. In 2015, we got The Force Awakens. 2017, we got The Last Jedi. And then in December of 2019, we would get The Rise of Skywalker. But in order for us to get to The Rise of Skywalker, we actually have to skip back in time to before The Rise of Skywalker and after The Last Jedi to fit all the pieces in on how those 2 movies bridge together and have it so everything makes sense. And the way that Disney did this and the way that Lucasfilm did this was actually by creating a little place called Galaxy's Edge. What? Okay, so if you go through the storyline of Galaxy's Edge actually fits between episodes 8 and episodes 9, The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, and it helps bridge the gap between those 2 films. If you know the entire storyline that is taking place in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, you can kind of bridge those 2 movies together, and a lot of things make a lot more sense in The Rise of Skywalker. However, people who never experienced Rise of the Resistance or Galaxy's Edge may not appreciate Rise of Skywalker as much as people like myself do. So let's explain exactly how this happened. So if you go back a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, aka Star Wars, if we go into the storyline of the Star Wars universe, in episode 8, we've got Luke Skywalker. He's off on an isolated planet, and Rey comes out to him. She's holding out a lightsaber, and she's like, that's the look she's giving him. And then he throws the lightsaber away, and 2.5 hours later, he sacrifices himself for the Resistance. Yes. Rey is reestablished with the Resistance. Yes. But something amazing happens, because at the end of that film, there is just a few members of the Resistance left. And they are sitting there talking to each other, and they're trying to figure out exactly where they're going to go from here. Because at that point, at the very end of The Last Jedi, it really is just that small band of members of the Resistance that really are going to be taking on the entire First Order. which is a massive, massive evil. I was going to say corporation, but it's not a corporation. It's this massive government that's completely taken over the galaxy, and it's just this small band of rebels that are left. So how do we get from there to at the end of Rise of Skywalker, when we have all these people who are banding together to come forward and say, hey, you know what? We're all going to be in this together. We're all in this together. They don't sing that. That's High School Musical, but that's besides the point. So while they're going through and having it so they're trying to rally up all the troops, that's where we get to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Because if you go to The Last Jedi and then you go to the start of Rise of Skywalker, there's more members of the Resistance there than there was at the end of the film. And it doesn't make sense at all, but it does. Because in the time between those two things, they started to recruit more and more people. And that's where you, the guest at Galaxy's Edge, comes in. Because when you are going on Rise of the Resistance, you are actually joining the Resistance to go through. So this is actually part of the recruiting process that's happening behind the scenes in between these two completely different films. Now, before we go into that any further, let's take a little bit of a step back. Because about 4 years before all of this stuff was going on, we have to talk about how this entire thing was announced. Picture it, the D23 Expo. Me and Eric have somehow gotten front row seats at the movie pavilion, or the movie live action movie press release. And Eric and I are sitting there, front row seats, having a grand old time. We kept on talking about how we don't know how we got these front row seats, because it was just by sheer luck that somehow we talked to the right person who said, oh, here, we're going to take you through a completely different door. And then they led us right to the front row. So Eric and I are sitting there just a few feet away from Bob Iger as he goes through his scoundrels. You were there too. So we're sitting there just a few feet away from Bob Iger, and they're going through this movie pavilion. And at the very end of the movie pavilion, right before the Parks Pavilion, they make an announcement that blows the entire world by storm. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to build not one, but two lands completely dedicated to Star Wars in both Disneyland and at Walt Disney World. The world goes crazy. The people who are waiting for the parks panel are losing their mind, because they just assumed that the big park announcements were going to be released during the parks panel and not a movies panel, but that's besides the point. During this presentation, they announced that, hey, we're going to have a brand new land. In this new land, we're going to have two attractions. These two attractions are going to blow everyone's mind. One of them is going to help bridge the gap between the upcoming movies, between episodes 8 and episode 9. And then the other one is going to give everyone the chance to go and fly the Millennium Falcon, much like every child, myself included, wanted to do since they were a little child. Now, every single one of the people was so focused on the idea of flying the Millennium Falcon, myself included, that in my mind I was like, I don't know what this other attraction is going to be, but there's no way this other attraction is going to be as good as flying the Millennium Falcon. And boy, was I wrong, because Rise of the Resistance would end up becoming not just one of the coolest attractions at Disney Hollywood Studios and Disneyland, but one of the coolest, if not the coolest attraction that Disney has ever created. They created this fully immersive attraction, but in order for us to kind of talk about that, we have to talk about exactly all the different ride procedures that go into creating this fully immersive attraction. I know we keep on going back and forth, but just bear with me. As also, by the way, while we go through here, if you guys have any questions, start throwing them out there. But my mind is racing like 1,000,000 miles a minute, and I know where I'm going. I just have to get there. So they're going through. And in order to go and pull off this attraction, they need to pull out every single trick that they have in storytelling in the Imagineering sense. Now, a few of these things is, one, upgrading all the different audimatronics that they had never had done before. So they have brand new audimatronics specifically for this attraction. Number two, use a trackless ride system. Now, the trackless ride system did debut years before over in Tokyo in a little attraction called Pooh's Honey Hunt. And then eventually would make its way to Paris in Remy's Ratatouille Adventure. And then it would also make its way to Epcot in bring me sort of to adventure. And then eventually, right after Rise of the Resistance, we would also have it over at Mickey Minnie's Runaway Railway. So they had this idea of a brand new technology that they had kind of done in the past, but kind of expanding on it, on having it so it wouldn't just be one level, but 2 levels. So in addition to having this brand new ride technology and these amazing animatronics, they also wanted to implement a few different features in here to have it so it wasn't just one ride and not just 2 rides, but actually 3 different attractions all put together. So they decided to go back to the original Star Wars simulator style of ride that they created back in the late 1980s in the form of Star Wars, and give guests a brand new simulator technology in the start of the ride, having it so the bridge of the gap between the pre-show and then the next pre-show would have a ride in it as well. On top of that, they would also have it so there'd be a brand new lift system, similar to how they have over at Tower of Terror. So we're going to have it so guests are going to be taken up, and they're also going to be taken down, and down in a very fun action. And then also with that taken down, they're also going to have it so there's a simulator. And in addition to that simulator, there's also another ride vehicle that they're already on. In addition to that ride vehicle that they're already on, they've also gone on to another ride vehicle. And it's very complex things. So let's slow down and let's take a step back and talk a little bit about all the different steps that we have to go to get here. Because while they're going through and creating all this different technology and having it so it is becoming the most advanced attraction that they've ever created, the most advanced before this was probably Tower of Terror. They're now taking all of these different things that they've built together and creating a brand new style attraction that they've never done before. So what was the original attraction going to be? Well, the original attraction was very similar to what it is. However, there was something else that was there that just it wasn't added in. And as soon as they announced it at the first expo, I was like, oh, that's really cool, but there's no way they could do it because it just doesn't make sense. And then they didn't do it because it just didn't make sense. So the original attraction was you go through a line. Ooh, then you go into a pre-show, and then after that pre-show, you're going to take a transport vehicle. That transport vehicle is going to have it so it's hijacked by the First Order. That First Order thing is going to have it so when you get into the next area, you are going to be joined by other Resistance members, which you eventually are. But in this case, you will actually have it so you are joining the Resistance, which you do eventually, but also have it so you are giving a blaster and start shooting at the Stormtroopers as well. So it's going to actually be like an interactive attraction to get to the next part of the attraction. They said that doesn't make sense because you just need one slow group and have it so, for instance, if there's a group that's going to take a little bit longer to get on an attraction, or maybe that's going to go quicker, it's going to have it so the entire speed of the unload and load and then unload and load, it takes a little bit longer. So they decided, let's scrap that idea, but kind of change the storyline a little bit, but also keep it exactly the same. Just no blasters. So what did we end up with? We ended up with an attraction that has so much detail to it, and that's what we're going to do right now. Again, if you guys have any questions out there, start throwing those questions out there, because we're going to go through this attraction. I might go through it pretty quickly, but hopefully I will not. So welcome to Batuu. Now, Batuu is a planet that had never been seen before in any Disney proper or Star Wars property, any Star Wars movie, any Star Wars book, any Star Wars comic book. There was nothing with a mention of Batuu. However, when they started to work on Batuu, they said, you know what, we want to have it so there are different storylines about Batuu, just to have it so those nerds in the world, like myself, will go through and they can actually kind of study the world of Batuu. And then when they get there, they can be like, oh, this is where this happened, and this is where this happened, this is where that happened. So what they did was they created a book, actually a few books, that were all about these different people who were in Batuu right around the same time that the storyline that we are in is taking place. Again, right between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. So when we get to Batuu, we are at a spot where there used to be a rebel base years ago, but those rebels are no longer around. And in addition to that, crime has kind of picked up in the area. Actually, a lot of crime has picked up in the area, mainly due to the bar that's around the corner, because they kind of run the entire area. Now, even though there is that stuff going on, it is kind of like this illegal trade area for different pirates to kind of come in and go and have it so they can go steal things and sell it to different people, either with the Resistance or with the First Order. One of them being Hondo Ohnaka, from Monaco Transports. He is the pirate that we see at the start and in the attraction for Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run. In addition to them kind of being out there and these, outlaws being out there, the Resistance has started to recruit people in different planets, not just Batuu, but all around the entire galaxy. And while they're going through and recruiting, when they're going through and recruiting these different people to join the Resistance and fight the First Order, they are going from different planet to different planet to different planet to different planet. Now, while they're going from different planet, it just happens that we are on Batuu at the same time that they are recruiting there at the same area. In addition to their recruitments, there's also some First Order people who have tracked down that there might be some Resistance people on the planet Batuu and some spies that are out there, and they are trying to capture those spies. Hence why we have Kylo Ren and the Stormtroopers walking through the entire land, trying to ask questions and try to figure out exactly who may know what is going on there. So while all that stuff is going on one side of the planet, over by the old Rebel base, some other things are going on. Now, I think it's important that when you are going up towards Rise of Resistance, on both sides you can find either an X-Wing fighter or an A-Wing fighter. If you look at these X-Wing and A-Wing fighters, these are older class X-Wings and A-Wings, opposed to the ones that are found in the film. That is because this is part of the old Rebel base. Yes, they are still being used. However, they are older because that's just where the base was. So while you start going through the entire Rebel base, you go through several different areas that help tell the story that was going on while you go through it. First off, you start wandering through the different rooms, and eventually you get to a star chart. Now, this star chart is going to be where the different members of the Rebel Alliance 30 years ago would go through and actually plan different attacks against the Empire. No, the First Order, but at that point it would have been the Empire. So this is where they would actually go through and plan these different things out. You're going to go past 2 of these while you're actually going through the queue. In addition to those ones, if you take a look behind the glass walls there, you will find, or not glass walls, behind the walls, there's like little cages, you will find several different blasters. In addition to the blasters, you will also find different jackets that belong to the Rebel soldiers. Now, if you actually look at some of these different things, you can actually translate it. On the side there is Arabish, the actual Star Wars language. If you go through and translate the different things, almost every single one of them refers to themselves as Rebel scum, mainly due to the fact that at that point the Empire would have referred to them as rebels or Rebel scum. And so because of that, we can find several different nods to the Rebel scum found throughout the queue. As you continue going through, there is one thing that does pay tribute to the more recent trilogy, and that would be the little suit that Finn was wearing at the start of The Last Jedi that would help him be revived from his injuries at the end of The Force Awakens. So as we go through this entire area, you'll eventually get to the star chart, and in the star chart room, it will take you into the final room where the pre-show exists. Now, in this pre-show, we're going to see several different characters, some of them very familiar to us, and some of them brand new. So let's start us off with the originals. We're not the originals, but we're going to go in order of exactly how it is. Number 1, we have BB-8 there. BB-8's up there, and he's just having a grand old time. That's what he does. He just whistles. BB-8's up there, and then we have this amazing hologram of Rey. Now, there are a few people out there who are wondering, but she's just being broadcast on midair. How does that happen? Right? Someone's probably asking that right now. Maybe not. I don't know. But if you are or if you're not, I'm going to answer the question. It looks like she is. However, it is just a giant mirror that is there, and so it's actually a giant TV that also plays the role of a mirror. So when she is being broadcast on there, it is not some magical illusion. It's just it's a magical illusion, but it's just a giant mirror that she is being projected upon to help give the idea that she's just a floating hologram. So she goes through and she starts to explain to us about how we are going to the secret base on Bakara, and we're not supposed to tell anyone about Bakara. And then she says Bakara like 50 times to make sure that we don't tell anyone about Bakara. I don't understand why Rey's like, she could have just been like, hey, listen, I want you guys to be part of the Resistance, and this is what we're going to do. I'm going to put you in a spaceship to a, undisclosed location. I'm not going to tell you what it is. We're just going to take you there, and that's where we're going to teach you how to be a Resistance. But instead, she has to say Bakara 50 times because she doesn't want us to tell anyone where we're going. You could have just stayed silent, Ray. Like, I don't understand. Never. So after she goes through, then we have it. So Poe Dameron, along with two other characters, will appear on screen. Poe Dameron, obviously, is found in the sequel trilogy. And then one of the other characters is Nien Nunb. Nien Nunb only appeared in Return of the Jedi, and then he would eventually appear again in The Rise of Skywalker. But Nien Nunb is like the alien dude that was with Lando Calrissian in the Millennium Falcon in Return of the Jedi. They go through and they blow up the second Death Star together. In addition to all of that going on, we also have our new character, Commander Beck. Now, there are a lot of people who think Commander Beck is Admiral Akbar. That is not true whatsoever. Admiral Akbar and Commander Beck are both Calamarian, but they are completely different characters. So Commander Beck is going to be taking us off to Bakara on a spaceship, and then the doors open up, and outside we've got a really cool X-Wing there. If you look inside the X-Wing, you can actually see that there is a human being in the front seat. It's a human being in the front seat, and he's moving his head around. This is actually Poe. He is ready to escort us off to Bakara. In addition to him, we do have BB-8 on the back of the X-Wing as well. So we load into our ride vehicle, and there are a few different things inside the ride vehicle that I think it's worth noting. First off, this is going to be our first attraction in the attraction. So this attraction, like I said, is multiple attractions within one attraction. However, this is going to be our first one, which is going to be a simulator. Now, the way that this simulator works is there's a few different processes that we kind of have to talk about. First off, you'll have a different experience in the front compared to a different experience in the back. So if you're the very front, you can see Commander Beck, you can see Nien Nunb, and then you can also see where you're going. If you're in the very back, you can see where you have left. Now, depending on the time of day that you actually go on Rise of Resistance, the screens will be either day or night. So if you're leaving during the day, it's going to be daylight. If it's nighttime, it's going to be nighttime. This will help give the illusion that this is all happening in real time, because it is, because you're actually flying out into the solar system. So when you get into the ship and you start taking off, there are a few different things in here that I think are really worth noting. First off, it is a simulator attraction. Second off, we do have two animatronics in here. One of them is Nien Nunb, and the other one is Commander Beck. However, not everything is exactly how it appears. So when you're in this area, you've got Commander Beck right there in front of you. That one's obvious. He's literally right there. He is a very advanced animatronic. Every now and then you'll get into one that does not have a Commander Beck that is working very well. But Commander Beck, animatronic, right in front of you. Nien Nunb, however, is a little bit more tricky because, yes, we can see Nien Nunb, and he's right there, but he's not. So this animatronic is actually a mere illusion. So yes, there is an animatronic of Nien Nunb in front of you. He's in front of Commander Beck. But instead of being facing this way, he's facing this way. And there is a mirror projecting him because otherwise they could not fit the entire ride vehicle in there. So even though it looks like he's right there in front of Commander Beck, he is actually below and in front of Commander Beck. And you were actually looking at a mirrored illusion to look down at him. Which is a really cool illusion that most people don't ever catch on to. And I don't think I ever would have unless I actually had a person who used to work on the attraction, who did maintenance on the attraction, who was like, hey, you want to hear something really cool? If you pay attention to the one side and look at it at a weird angle, you can actually see that it's a mirror. And after that, I was like, there's no way. And then I was like, oh my gosh, it's a mirror. Who would have thought? So how this works is you are in a simulator, but it's a different simulator than how Star Tours is, because Star Tours is a simulator that stays in the same place. So on Star Tours, you get into the simulator, you move around, you kind of wiggle around a little bit, and then you land. And when you land, you exit out the opposite doors that you came in. Seems pretty simple. That's how you would think it would work in this situation too. However, you also have to keep in mind that when one pre-show is going on, another pre-show is getting out at a different room. There are actually going to be two pre-show rooms in this attraction. So pre-show A, pre-show B. Pre-show A is going on, pre-show B is exiting and getting into the thing. And then as soon as those people get on, pre-show A is exiting and they're going out to get into the thing while pre-show B is filling up and watching the vehicle, if that makes sense. So we always have people entering and exiting that room, and they are entering and exiting out of the room at a very rapid pace. So when you're getting onto this ride vehicle, yes, it would make sense that you're going through and you're going to go through a little simulator, and then you're going to exit out of one side. And that's why when most people go on this attraction, they get in, and then when the doors are about to open, they all face the opposite door they came in, because it just makes logical sense. But then you enter through the door that you exit through the door that you entered. And then you're like, wait, how did that happen? Well, that's what we're here for. So thanks to my running app on my phone, I tracked the ways that this thing moves around one time, because I was very curious, and I was like, I don't know how this is working, but I need to find out how exactly. You are on a rotator. So when you start to fly, you may notice that, yes, while you are going up in the air, or so it feels, you are also having it so you are going mainly to the one side, and that illusion of going to one side also helps it so they can make it so you start to rotate backwards. And then when you start to be pulled back into that tractor beam to get into the Star Destroyer, not the Star Destroyer. Yeah, the Star Destroyer. When you start to go back into the Star Destroyer, it just makes sense, because what they're doing is they're actually bringing you back into a completely different area than you started. So there's a full rotation that is going on of these different transports, and some of them have people in it. Other ones are unloading people, and other ones are unloading people. So it's just a constant rotation of exactly how these things are moving around in a circle, giving the illusion that you are flying off into space, and then you are being captured by a Star Destroyer. And then after you're captured, you are exiting out the same thing, and it blows your mind, and it's still going to blow your mind, because even though you now know the knowledge of how this works, you're going to be like, holy cow, this is the coolest thing in the world, because it really is. It's like the coolest ride. I absolutely love it. You get off, and now we have different people who are working. They're people who work with the First Order, and these people are now coming onto your ship and taking you off to be interrogated. Now, there's a few different things that we need to talk about between being kidnapped and then being brought into the interrogation room. First off, that room of stormtroopers is one of the most impressive things that you'll ever see. But one of the things that I want to point out before we even talk about that is when you are going back and being pulled into that tractor beam of the Star Destroyer, if you are on the back side of the ship, you are in the right place to see a really cool detail that the people on the front part of the ship are going to completely miss out on. So when you're going through into the room, if you look out the front room or if you look out the back room, the room that you are entering in that spaceship is the exact same room that you are entering when you are actually on that landing platform with all those different stormtroopers there. However, when you are entering into that room, these stormtroopers are not there. But if you're on the back side of the ship, I hope you guys are following this. If you're on the back side of the ship and you're looking out the window, you can actually see the doorway that you're going to be going down, or the hallway that you're going to be going down. All the stormtroopers are filing out of there and lining up at the spot across from the spaceship. So when you actually exit the spaceship, you can see all the stormtroopers there, and if you are on the backside of the ship, you can see all those stormtroopers actually filing out. Whew. I need a drink real quick. Keep on throwing those questions out there. No one has yet. Sometimes I don't know if you guys are not interested at all, or if you're just like very interested, and that's why you're silent. So hopefully it's the second one and not the first one. Okay, let's keep on going here because we got a lot more to talk about. Okay, so we get into that stormtrooper room. Now the stormtrooper room has a few little details in there that I really like. One of them is no longer around. So ever since they added a single rider line into this attraction, most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, you will skip this pre-show experience of going through the little Star Cruiser. Instead, you actually go backstage and you enter into this room. So you go behind the Star Cruiser and then you're in the room. So you miss the pre-show, but then you're in the room. But because of that, they used to have it so there would be actors as stormtroopers in the room as well, in addition to all the animatronics of the stormtroopers. Yes, they are all animatronics. Yes, they are very basic animatronics. Only a few of them will move at a time, but all of them have, or most of them have the ability to move their heads, and that's about it. They will not be moving their bodies around. They're not going to dance. And that's why at the start of this attraction, when it first opened up, they would have a few different stormtroopers in there as well as actors to kind of give the illusion that, hey, any of them can move around at any point. In addition to all the stormtroopers, on the left-hand side while you're walking out, you will find a ride vehicle. This is going to be the ride vehicle that you're going to be getting into, and it's just showing you that it is a transport vehicle for prisoners. And that's essentially it. So as we go down the hallway, first off, before you get to the hallway, take a look at that massive TIE fighter above you. I think that's just one of the coolest things in the world. Again, I grew up on Star Wars. I just love Star Wars. I've always loved Star Wars. And going onto this ride, it's just the coolest thing in the world. But you have the massive TIE fighter there, and every time I see it, I'm like, this is so cool. I'm in Star Wars. And then you go down a long hallway. At the very end of the hallway, that is going to be where they're going to put you into your groups for the interrogation. Before you get interrogated, you're going to see 2 stormtroopers that are in the middle. If you look at the actual pad that they're sitting at, there's going to be a standard first order work pad. The first time that we ever saw one of these was going to be in A New Hope when they're going to the prisoner transport area to go capture Princess Leia. It's the exact same design that was found in the original Star Wars. Eventually, we would find it in Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels. You found it in Star Wars, multiple every Star Wars thing. Whenever you're in an Imperial ship, you're always going to see this at some point or another. It's just like a little command post. Rogue One's another great example of this. When they're going through to go steal the Death Star plans, that is the same exact thing that K2SO is there, and he's beating down on to make sure that they can, get saved. So we go through and we are separated into our different rooms. When we get separated into our different rooms, we are going to be put into one of 4 different chambers to be interrogated at. And I know you're thinking, do these different chambers actually do different things? Kind of. Yes, maybe a little bit. Let's explain. Okay. So when you're going to be separated, you're going to be separated into groups of 16 because there are 4 rows in the front, 4 rows in the back, and you got 2 different vehicles there. So you got 16 people who are going to be going into the interrogation room. You've got 4 different colors that could go on: orange, blue, red, or white. And in addition to those different areas, when you go into the room, you have it so you turn around and there above you is a stormtrooper that's on patrol. And then Kylo Ren comes in and he says, "Leave us." And he goes, I know you have the rebel, sorry, I know you know where the rebel base is, and now you will give it to me. And then General Hux is like, you're needed on the ship, or they need you on everyone. They leave. After they leave, we go into another very impressive little detail that I just love, because before you can actually see it, you can hear it. You can hear some voices behind a wall. And if you ever go on this attraction with people who have never been on it before, they think it's just workers behind a wall. They don't realize that it's actually part of the story. A few weeks ago, I was on it, and it was so funny because the people were literally leaning against the wall, and they could not open the wall until those people got off. So the cast members were not opening up the door because they know that the people, anyways. So you can hear voices behind it going, and then there's like blaster marks around a wall, and then all of a sudden the wall opens up, and after it opens up, 2 people dressed as resistance members come on and they go, "We're with the resistance. Come on, we're going to rescue you." And you are put into your next ride vehicle. Now, keep in mind, our first ride vehicle was the little transport that took us from the one spot to the Death Star. Now it's going from the Death Star into, or not the Death Star, the Star Destroyer. And now we're on the Star Destroyer getting onto our next ride vehicle. Now, when we're getting onto this ride vehicle, this is going to be a completely trackless system, meaning, yes, you are going to be going on a specific route the entire time, but also you're not actually on a track. It's the ride vehicle knows exactly where it has to go. So when you're in this room, you are first going to be introduced to Finn. Now, Finn is there letting you know that he is on the Star Destroyer as well, and he is there to rescue you. And he's also very upset because he doesn't realize that you guys are still on board and that you should be off board because they're about to blow up this entire Star Destroyer that you are currently sitting on. So good luck to you. Most likely you are about to die. And just matter of fact, like, you are now part of the First Order, kind of. Not really, but we're going to escape. So what they did was they decided to reprogram 2 droids, much like they had done multiple times in the history of Star Wars when you really think about it. I mean, K2SO, You got Chopper was reprogrammed at one point. C-3PO was reprogrammed at one point. A lot of different, anyways. But so they've reprogrammed these two droids, and these two droids, which are supposed to transport prisoners around the Star Destroyer, are now there to help rescue you as well. So you're put on there, and you either go backwards or go forward, depending on which room you are in. Like I said, we do have 4 interrogation rooms. This, again, is going to give us the option to have it so we can load and unload in this ride vehicle at a much quicker path. So when you're actually getting into this ride vehicle, you will either go forward or backwards, depending on which room you're in. Some of them have it so you're facing backwards. Some of them have it so you're facing forwards. And then you go from there. I hope that makes sense. It should. You go into the first room, and while you're going to the first room, the first thing you see is 2 more droids that are having prisoner things, and they say, "Boom, boom, boom," and they go, "Tell them it's a prisoner transport." That's Commander Beck talking. And then they go, "Brr, brr, brr, brr." And they go, "Did they buy it? Good." Now, these 2 that are actually coming in are going to be going into the same room that you just left, because their whole purpose is to go back and have it so they can load the next guest into the thing. So when you look, okay, let's think back to things like Pirates of the Caribbean. So if you go on Pirates of the Caribbean, there's times where you get stuck by that jail, and then you hear that, "Yeah, boy, here, boy," and you're sitting there and you're waiting for the boats in front of you to move forward. Same thing can happen on Rise of the Resistance. There are times where you'll get stuck in different positions. However, one of the ways that they actually have it so this can slow down is when you're going through, you can see these 2 different droids along with their little, transport things coming from the one hallway. And if you look down that hallway, you can see quite a few. That's because this is going to be where the end of the ride is. It's going to be around that corner. And this is going to be where that stack up is going to happen. So instead of having a stack up on the actual attraction, it happens after the attraction with all the prisoner transport spots going on there. Every now and then you'll get backups at other parts of the ride, but it's rare, mainly due to the fact that they've expanded the possibility of a ride backup happening when the ride is not happening. If that makes sense. I think it does. Okay, so you keep on going around the corner. When you get around the corner, we have a droid that is searching for us, a probe droid, and this could be originally found in Empire Strikes Back on the planet Hoth. Luke shoots it, and that's how the Empire finds out that that's where they are. It starts going through, and I don't know why. I've never understood why. It's scanning the other wall, and they're like, "Did it see you? No? Good." It's like, yeah, because the droid's stupid. If it turned around, like if it came down and was facing towards where it should be facing out, it would know that you're there. But instead, it's not the smartest droid, and he's like, "Hey, let me scan this wall over here and see if there's any prisoners." No, there's none over there. We're behind you, buddy. So then we go around the corner, and we've got 2 stormtroopers at the top. Now, these 2 stormtroopers are going to be an illusion. They are actually being projected up upon a wall, actually upon a screen, to give the illusion that they are closer and 3-dimensional than they actually are. Then they go, "Look, it's the prisoners. Shoot, fire." And then they start shooting. One of my favorite parts about this, first off, I giggle uncontrollably almost every single time because I just think it's the coolest thing in the world. But when you start going backwards, if you take a look at the ceiling, you'll notice that parts of the ceiling start to go missing. This is a thing that they started using back in the early 1990s, specifically for Muppet Vision 3D. The way that they do this is they have it so there is a solid wall, and then that solid wall will flip to give the illusion that there is now a hole there. So this part, if you look at it, right before you go through, if you know where the blaster shots are going to be, you can kind of see a little bit of an outline, but not enough. Like, they do a really good job of hiding it, but they also have it so there's going to be little scrim things hanging from the ceiling to give the illusion that these blasters are going above you. Because if you've ever watched a Star Wars film, you know for a fact that the laser blasts continue going as a laser all the way through, opposed to a thing like a Western where it's a gunshot, but you don't see the bullet until it hits whatever it hits. So in order to give the illusion that you can actually see these laser blasts going above you, that's how they have it. They have these little scrims kind of hanging down, and they're hidden, so they're not very visible to the naked eye, and that allows us to see the idea that these are laser blasts flying through the ceiling. Then we turn around and we keep on going through, and then we see number 2 and number 3 AT-ATs that were built specifically for Disney's Hollywood Studios. The first one, of course, being the one that is found in front of Star Tours, but that one is not complete. If you go to the backside of it, because it's supposed to be a movie set, it is a facade on one side, and the other side is completely fake. However, the one that is found here, or the two that are found here, are completely whole. Actually, these were the first two things that they actually built inside of Rise of the Resistance. Back in the day when they were still doing the construction for Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, they used to have that back entrance to Disney Hollywood Studios, and I used to love going through that back entrance just because it was a really cool, unique way to go into the park, and it was also not as used oftenly as the other entrance. So if you went through there during the construction, one of the coolest things in the world was you could see these two AT-ATs being built, and I just thought it was the coolest thing. Like, I just remember I used to drive by, like, 2 times a week. I was like, oh my gosh, look at that, there's AT-ATs right there. And then eventually, anyways, that's besides the point too. So we see the AT-ATs, and then there are two completely different routes that we can take. One of them is if you're the front car, and another one is if you are the back car. Now, if you're the front car, you're going to go up between the AT-AT, and then also the doors in front of you are going to start closing, and then you need a different way out of there, and you're going to backtrack up into a lift area that's going to take you up a floor. While you're going backwards, you'll see Finn on the right-hand side. Finn's going to say, look, the transport things are going to be right below you. And then all of a sudden the thing starts taking you up. He goes, what? Why are you going up? I said down. Up is bad. And then through the AT-AT that's in front of you, you can see the side of the door, and they have it so the cannon starts being swiveled towards you. And then when you start backing up, there's a bunch of different laser blasts that are going above you. This is giving through the illusion, unlike the other one where there's the different scrims, this is going to be having it so there's different pipes, and the pipes just all of a sudden start to go through in the laser, look. So instead of having it so it looks like it's pipes, now it looks like there's lasers flying above you, and then you can have debris kind of flying everywhere, even though it's not real debris. It's, again, an illusion. You're going to keep on going back up, and then all of a sudden you're going to get to a room where you're going to swivel around, and you're going to see Kylo Ren and General Hux in front of you. However, before we get to that, let's go to the other transport. Because if you're on the back transport entering into the AT-AT room, when that first one starts to back up, then your other one has to swivel around and get to a completely different area as well. So it goes in front of the front AT-AT, and when it gets to the front of that first AT-AT, we still see Finn. I know, there's two Finns. So the one Finn is squatting down on the ground on the right-hand side. This one is standing up against the wall, and he goes through the exact same stuff. But instead of having it so there is a cannon that's swiveling around and trying to fire at you, this one, when you start to go up, the guns, sometimes they don't work anymore, but the guns start to lower down on the front of the AT-AT, and they start to fire at you as well. Again, different pipes going above you. You'll go around the corner, and then eventually you get to the room with Kylo Ren and General Hux. Now, when you get to this room, these animatronics are extremely advanced. Holy cow, Kylo Ren, it's just unbelievable. General Hux, I don't like that dude, but he's there as well. So he sits there and he says, the resistance has neither the courage or the resources to free the prisoners. And he's like, no, they are coming. And he's like, raise the shields. And it's like, I see no sign of now. And then all of a sudden you start to see all these different ships jumping out of light speed and coming up to attack you. Well, not you, but they're attacking the Star Destroyer that you are in. And then all of a sudden they're like, sir, the prisoners escape. And Kylo Ren goes, how brave, but ultimately hopeless. And he does this full swerve, and you're like, ah! And you start backing up. And when you start backing up, you get to another spot, depending on which side you're on. One's on the right-hand side, one's on the left-hand side. But you'll see Kylo Ren. Again, this is like a scrim effect, giving you the illusion that there's more depth that's going on there. And Kylo Ren starts walking towards you with his lightsaber. You back up into an elevator. If you pay attention to the four corners of the room, you will actually see that you are on an actual elevator, even though you're not. But you will see that the lights are completely flittering, giving you the illusion that you are dropping down multiple floors. While this is all happening, if you take a look at the ceiling that's in front of you, you will also see Kylo Ren's lightsaber come down. This is one of the most common questions I get asked about this attraction on how exactly do they do that lightsaber effect? And I always say, haha, do you really want to know? And I'm going to say to you, well, I'm going to tell you anyways because you're watching the show. So the way that they do this is there is a U shape or a C shape, depending on what you're looking at. Let's say it's a C shape because it's going to be easier for me to do with this. So there's a C shape on the wall, and that C shape can rotate all the way around like this. So the way that this is working is the lightsaber will protrude from one spot, and then that C-shaped door, which is on a ceiling, will swivel, giving the illusion that it is cutting a hole in the wall, but in reality, all it's doing is opening up that wall and having it so that starts to expose while the lightsaber goes through, giving the illusion that the lightsaber is actually cutting through the ceiling, but in reality, it's just a door that is swiveling, but if that door is above you instead of in front of you. Overall, really, really cool effect. As soon as it starts to open up more and more and more, all of a sudden the elevator doors open up and you go into the cannon room. Now, the cannon room in Walt Disney World and Disneyland were both set up to be the exact same setup. The ones in Disneyland apparently are still working. I've never been on it over there. I've only been here at Walt Disney World. But in Walt Disney World, they do not work anymore, and it's a shame because it's just one of the coolest effects. But those cannons used to come out and then shoot, and when they would shoot, they would like, the whole cannon would move back as if it was like recoiling. So that is why when you're going through that room, your ride vehicles will go forward and backwards because it's going backwards to make way for the cannons that were at one point moving forward. You'll eventually get into the next room. On the right-hand side of the room, you'll see Finn there, and he's like, "You got to get out of here. The ship's about to..." And then all of a sudden you hear, and Kylo Ren is there. Now, one of the things that people have been pointing out to me is the fact that Kylo Ren is not always working, and they decided to add a brand new scene. Actually, the scene has always been there. So what Disney does a lot of times when they're building these different attractions is they will have an A scene and a B scene. The A scene is the high quality scene that if it was working, amazing, they can put this on for guests. However, if it's not working, they can have a backup scene, and this backup scene is also going through and being true to the story. It's just not as impressive. So sometimes you'll see the A scene, sometimes you'll see the B scene, because the A scene audio-animatronic for Kylo Ren is very impressive, and because it is very impressive and very complex, that also means that sometimes it just does not work. And because sometimes it just does not work, they do have to use that B scene instead and have it so the ride doesn't have to close down for the entire day if Kylo Ren is not working. But instead, they can work on him overnight and then let people enjoy him the next day after they worked on him. So if the A scene is working, Kylo Ren is behind you as an animatronic, and he is there, and he is talking about how he's pretty much going to kill you. And while he's going through and talking, if you look out the right-hand window, you will see an A-wing swiveling through the air, and then it hits the wall, and then the wall behind Kylo Ren bursts open, and he starts to flail, and then one of the panels from the ceiling comes down in front of him, because that way they can reset the animatronic for the next room, and they don't see Kylo Ren when they enter into the room. If that area is not working, instead we have it so you face the windows where that same, the A-wing is coming through and crashing through the wall. Instead, you will see Kylo Ren up there, and Kylo Ren is inside of a TIE fighter, and he's there talking, doing the same exact dialogue that he was doing before, and he's talking about how he's going to destroy you, and blah, 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 and then all of a sudden another ship runs into him, and then he starts to spin out of control and flies away, and no matter what happens, both times you're going to exit out the same exact way. Now, when you start to exit, there's going to be 4 different spots that you can exit through. There's 2 doors on the left or 2 doors on the right. No matter which one you do, you're going to have the same exact experience. However, you will see completely different things. Because when you get into these rooms, if you're on the left-hand side, you'll have a spaceship in front of you. If you're on the right-hand side, you'll have a spaceship in front of you. But you will also be on a different part of the spaceship that you're currently on. So you'll see different parts of the spaceship that's in front of you. When you're looking in front of you, the first thing you might notice is that the escape pods that are on the other ship in front of you are starting to fall down, and it gives you a little hint of what is about to happen to you, because you are now on a drop ride, much like Tower of Terror, but that drop ride also turns into a simulator ride. So you go through a drop sequence where you're only dropping about 10 to 15 feet, and after you do that 10 to 15 foot drop, then you are on a simulator until eventually you crash back into the spot right next to where you entered into the queue and over by Rise of the Resistance, and you back up, and eventually they're like, hey, you're Resistance now. I don't know if I have that title, but let's do it. And then you turn the corner and you see the escape pod for Beck, and usually you can just see him there, but sometimes Finn is being overly dramatic. He's like, does anyone have eyes on Beck? Beck. And he's like, oh, you're alive. Well, I should hope so. Bravo. And then you go off about your day at Galaxy's Edge. And that, my friends, is our deep dive at Rise of the Resistance, which I did not know we were going to do an episode about tonight. So hopefully that did the attraction justice. We did lose subscribers as we went through, but we'll take a few questions if you guys have any questions out there. We started at 8,434, then we went up to 8,435, and now we went down to 8,432. Do you know how many animatronics there are in total throughout the attraction? So actual physical ones on the actual attraction. So the first time, okay, we can get through this. You got BB-8 in the pre-show, but there's actually 2 BB-8s for each pre-show. Then when you get into the next room, we'll just do one at a time, because otherwise then we'd be like, oh, there's like 3 transport vehicles. And okay, so BB-8, and then we got Commander Beck and 9 Num. And then when we get into the next room, there's like most of those stormtroopers can move. They're not advanced animatronics, but at the same time, let's just throw another 20 out there. So 23. And then from there, when you get into the next room, you got 2 stormtroopers there. Those two stormtroopers are animatronics as well, 25. And then when you get to the ride vehicle, technically your ride vehicle has an animatronic with it in the form of the droid. So we'll say another 27 altogether, just, with those 2 and then the 25 that we already had. And then when we get into the first room, there's none. When we get into the next room, we got 1 and 2. There's 2 different fins in there. Again, we're only counting 1 pass, so we'll just say 1. So 26. Then we have 27, 28 in the forms of Kylo Ren and General Hux. And then when we back up, we have 29 with the next Kylo Ren in the final scene. And then when we are entering into the thing, we got 30 in the form of Commander Beck. So let's say 30. I'm thinking 30. I could be wrong, but I'm thinking 30-ish. How many times overall have you been on Rise? I don't know. This year, not a lot here. We can look it up for this year. It's over 100 for sure. But how many? Oh, I'm at Magic Kingdom right now. That's not Magic Kingdom. I go to Star Wars Rise of the Resistance. I've only been on twice this year, which is not a lot. I need to get on more. I almost went on yesterday. I gave my Instagram people the vote on which attraction I should do after the nighttime shows, and they chose Mickey Minnie's Runaway Railway, and then second place was Slinky Dog. Rise of the Resistance had the least amount of votes, and I was surprised by that. But it's a great ride. It's a great ride. We do need to get that number up. Yeah, when it first opened up, I was going at least once a week, if not twice a week. And then last year I got on the single rider line quite often, but now I'm like, I want to go through the regular line specifically so I can do, because this single rider line doesn't always give you the first transport vehicle. Sometimes it just takes you right to the Stormtrooper room, so you miss that first transport. I love that first transport. So, yeah, we do need to get that number up sometime in the near future. YouTube needs to learn math. I agree. Especially on the money side. Like, if they can give me more money, that'd be awesome. Okay, it looks like we don't have any other questions coming through here. But I'm glad that did you guys enjoy the Rise of the Resistance? That was a very spur of the moment. Someone just threw that at me, and I'm glad they threw that at me. I hope you guys learned something. I know I probably missed a lot that we could have gone into. There's a whole lot more that we could have talked about. So maybe in the future we will do a part 2 of Star Wars Rise of the Resistance. It's a great attraction if you've never done it before. All right, but with all that being said, tonight's episode, as always, is sponsored by our super duper, our good guys. They are the Resistance, and they are not the First Order. Our good old Patreon pals. If you're one of our Patreon pals out in the chat room right now, give us an ooh yeah. Okay. Thank you everyone out there for joining us once again this week. Please keep on spreading the word about the Wednesday show and from Screen of Theme, and invite anyone and everyone to join the groups over on Facebook and also to subscribe here on YouTube. If you didn't know already, we do have a brand new book, A Closer Look at the Animal Kingdom's Dinoland USA. You can either purchase it for your Kindle or your Kindle app free. That's a free app, Kindle app. So if you want to order it on your Kindle, You can do that over on Amazon. Otherwise, you can head over to my, what's it called? Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a huge blank right now. I literally just talked about this like 2 hours ago with a friend too. I was like, oh, that's Etsy. You can buy it on my Etsy. If you order it through Etsy, I will sign it and then mail it out to you the very next day after you purchase it. So if you like your copy, I highly recommend ordering a copy now. Thank you everyone though for joining us. I hope you guys enjoyed. As always, remember that anything can happen if you let it. Until next time, have a great week, everybody. Goodbye. Goodbye now. Goodbye. Goodbye now. Goodbye. Are they gone? Are they gone? Oh good, my cheeks just can't stand this kind of pressure. Jiminy